What if we could transform the way that we think about one of our most vital resources, water? Well, today I'm going to be joined by Riggs Eckelberry, CEO of Origin Clear, a company at the forefront of redefining water management through its water on demand technology. What does that mean? Well, in a world grappling with climate change and rising demands on municipal systems, today I want to learn more about how Origin Clear's approach to decentralized water treatment not only is advancing technological innovation, but is also creating new opportunities for investors and, most importantly, communities. But I don't want to reveal any spoilers. So enough from me. Let's get Riggs onto the podcast to talk about his incredible work and how they are leveraging technology to make a real difference. So a massive warm welcome to the show, Riggs. Can you tell everyone listening a little about who you are and what you do?
Neil, thank you. It's a pleasure. Well, we have a company that is revolutionizing water, and we have a moment in time right now where there's an opportunity to do something about our infrastructure, but also about the amount of money that's being spent on infrastructure. Both of these are related. And what we've been alerting people for some time is that bills are not being met. And by the way, it's very true in the UK. Mm-hmm. There's sewage networks they're only being replaced every 200 years, and then that's kind of the replacement schedule. Believe me, it gets pretty nasty down there. But in the U.S. also, we're looking at a annual deficit of money that should be spent of $430 billion by 2029, just 5 years from now, according to the American Society of Civil Engineers. Okay, nobody's going to spend $500 billion on water. Not going to happen. Per year? No. Yeah. And even if they did, what do we know about those large amounts of money? They don't accomplish anything, right? We get bridges to nowhere, trains that are non-existent, et cetera. We have a broken system with central infrastructure. The good news is that if we deregulate, if we break up that decentralized system and let industry do its own water purification, that's actually feasible. And that's what we're doing. We call it water on demand. And not only are we providing the technology and equipment for it, but also the financing.
Well, there's so many different reasons I was excited to get you on the podcast today, because water is something we can none of us can live without. It's the most precious resource there is out there. And also, we've got the big AI boom at the moment. And what we don't talk about enough is just how much water that consumes. And maybe that's a conversation for another day. But one of the things that put you on my radar is how you offer this almost unique approach by allowing industries and communities to treat and recycle their own water. So how does that model ease the pressure on those municipal systems, and what environmental benefits have you observed from a more decentralized approach?
Okay, well, first of all, cities don't have a very hard time supplying fresh water. They get their water from wherever, rivers, wells, whatever, and they purify it. But it's not a daunting task. There's not a lot of, cleanup to do. So providing fresh water is something they do well, and we don't want to change that. There's been experiments both in America and in the UK with privatizing fresh water supplies, and it's been a disaster. So let the government handle, it's just like let them keep handling the red and green lights in the traffic system. These are basic things that we don't want to lose. And we're going to discover that here in the US with this new administration. They're going to have to say, well, yeah, we don't like red, traffic control, but we're keeping it because. So in the area of water, we will keep the fresh water coming in for the city. Fine. Now, 90% of all water usage is by industry and agriculture. If the system is overloaded, take the load off the system. You can do one of two things: build to meet the load, or you can become more efficient and pare it back. What we're doing is we're saying, you're a brewery, you're being told by the city, well, we can't take your water, it's too much of it, et cetera, et cetera. You have to truck it to another county, all these terrible things. We're saying, just put a unit on your site, treat it, and you're set. And it actually works out well for them financially because, number one, they can recycle that water, right? They can use it again for wash downs and steam vessels and so forth. They don't have to make beer with it. People have a thing about reusing effluents for food and beer. But you get a great deal of reuse and reduce your water rates that way, number one. Number two, you're free of this terrible hyperinflation spiral that's going on in America, at least, probably elsewhere, which is that water and sewage rates are hyperinflating faster than health costs and college tuition, both. So these are considered very, very high inflating, and water is going beyond it. Why? Because the cities are not funded, therefore they're going to their water rates. It's all they can do. What are they going to do? So they're charging more. More and more people are defaulting. It's becoming a big percentage of people's monthly bill. And for a business, it starts to mean something. And so if they can go off in their own system, now the inflation is just, the cost of changing the filtration pumps. That's an inflation they can deal with. So control over inflation, recycling to reduce rates. And the third one is the most interesting of all. You get out of the clutches of the utility. You're not part of that. Like, no, as long as I meet permit requirements, I'm good. And there's a lot of people out there like, can I just opt out of the system and I'll pay my dues? Thank you very much. And that's really the three big reasons, and it's working. We have companies that want it now. They want to do it. And there's kind of an inverted triangle. At the very tippy bottom of the triangle, we have the people who absolutely must treat their own water. The city has told them they won't take their water. They're too far away. The stuff's too noxious, all that stuff. And so they're forced to do their own. That's who our business is handling right now. The next widening up of this triangle is the people for whom it might be a good idea, except it's $1 million. And for them, we say, don't worry about it. Don't pay for it. Just pay on the meter as you're used to. So they're switching. It's meter switching. We've seen that a lot in energy, where people switch meters to alternate providers to lower their costs. I don't know if it got that deregulated in the UK, but in the US it did. And we're meter switching in water. And for the business, nothing happens. Now, meter switching in energy, you just literally switch a meter. Meter switching in water, you have to have a machine show up at your site to treat your water, because water doesn't switch the way electricity does. A little bit, small detail. So we had to put a machine on site to do the water processing, and we manage it. It's so turnkey that just a regular janitor can do the support on site, so nothing special. The on-site provision of the water treatment completely hands off for the business, and all they do is pay by the gallon. So most businesses, I go, okay, sounds good to me. Where do I sign, right? Because no more capital requirement, and all these benefits come about. And for us, for the rest of us, we see a less burdened central water system. That's the beauty of it, right? Less burdened water system. And over time, this starts to add up. Now, how do we scale that up? We're not going to do it with just us, with a couple of water companies. It's not going to happen. That's why we're taking the financial element of water on demand, and we are going to be enabling it just how, like Elon Musk is allowing anybody to use their supercharger network. We're going to let other water companies have access to this financial, and it'll become a pure capital play. I don't know if you've heard of these power purchase agreements where people put solar panels on top of buildings.
Yeah.
But the solar panels are owned by the service provider, and the company just pays the utilities bill, right? That's essentially what we want to do. But do it with any water provider, any water company. Hey, if you want your client not to have to pay a bunch of capital up front, use water on demand. So we're going to take this. Initially, we're piloting with our own water companies, but then we want to broaden it, make it available to any water equipment company that's got a client that does not have capital, and eventually we take it international. Now, how do we take it international? I guarantee you that I do not want to operate a network in the Middle East, for example.
Mm.
But there's somebody in Dubai who wants to, right? So we can get a financial partner in financial capital who will run water on demand, the finance play, to work with water equipment companies in Jordan and elsewhere to handle water problems. And eventually what we want to get to the really intractable problems in the world, such as India and Bangladesh, where conditions are truly horrible. And again, it's handled with a fintech approach, very decentralized and without requiring a vast amount of centralized investment.
And of course, with any conversation about water, whether it be here in the UK, over there in the US, or Bangladesh, indeed, one thing we all share is the experiences of the impacts of climate change, which are intensifying right now. And as a result of that, the demand for sustainable water solutions is also increasing. So how are you at Water on Demand responding to some of those challenges? And what role do you see yourselves playing in building a more climate resilience or building climate resilience for these local communities, whether they're here in the UK, US, or India, or indeed any region of the world?
Well, I pine for the good old days of 2016 when Lux Research told us that by 2025, it would be $150 billion unmet budget. Well, it turns out to be far more than that now. And it's because of the effects of climate, saltwater infiltration, flooding, all these, all of a sudden, speaking of Dubai, it gets flooded. Spain gets flooded. All these places, the desert gets flooded. Pretty soon we'll be hearing about flooding in the Antarctic. It's just a complete mishmash. And you're right. It's dramatically breaking the infrastructure assumptions. Mm. What we can do about it is continue. Look, a centralized system is a weak, or it's hard to defend a centralized system. Much easier to defend it if it's decentralized. One side goes down, no big deal. I'm old enough to remember the great power blackout of 1968 in New York in the Northeast, and one switch was tripped and the entire Northeast was down. That's the problem with central systems. So we've got to move away, and also because of cyber concerns and so forth. I'll give you a concrete example. Miami-Dade County grew so fast that they have about well over 100,000 septic tanks inside the county lines. Now, septic tanks are nice concepts. They're basically a big old digester, right? It's a stomach. But they fail. And when they fail, they pollute the underground. And you have lots and lots of bacterial and viral infections as a result. So the county of Miami-Dade said, well, we better do something about these. Their current plan is to run sewage lines out to every one of those 100,000 homes all over the county. $8 billion. Fine, assuming you have the money.
Yeah.
You can also tear up roads for 20 years, and the problem will remain unsolved for 20 years. Why not just offer a rebate program and have people switch to a closed circuit system with, a pump out sludge tank? End of story, right? These if you move to a high-tech solution that is not centralized, but that is localized, you can get to the problem of any problem, I believe.
And I love how you've created this tech solution. As this is a tech podcast, one of the things that stood out to me is how you've positioned clean water as an investable asset through this innovative fintech solution. So can you elaborate on how it works and what makes Water on Demand an attractive option for, let's say, a Main Street investor seeking those long-term sustainable returns? Because it's the two worlds that you never thought would come together, or at least from the outside looking in, I wouldn't have put these two worlds together. So can you just walk me through how that works?
Well, we consider water essential, but it is not called a commodity. And why? Because you can't buy and sell it at any kind of predictable price. Water is very local. And so you have a problem in terms of how do you price water? And in fact, I'm going to leave to smarter people the problem of uniform pricing of fresh water. What we can do is we can uniformly price the water that is treated because it goes through our system, and therefore we know how much it costs. Okay, so now you've priced your water. The energy industry has something called master limited partnerships, and that's where they assemble a bucket of energy properties, pipelines, gas production, oil production, in a bucket. It's a large market. It's about $300 billion worth of about 30 funds. Or 30 or more funds. So these are all these various funds, and it's worth a lot of money. and it complements the regular water industry. And what is great about it is that you and I can invest in an MLP right now, and it has returns better than the S&P. And so we want to do the same thing for water. So we've made it possible right now for people to invest in a water MLP, we call it water on demand, and they will get not only equity, but stock, but they will also get generational royalties. And that's what's exciting about it is we're taking a working model that's being used for energy and we're applying it to the water. And we say water like an oil well, and we are commoditizing water.
And before you came on the podcast, I was reading the Origin Clear, which is the parent company. It describes itself as this clean water innovation hub. So I'm not sure how much you could share around this, but are there any key innovations that you're developing at Origin Clear, particularly with water on demand and modular water systems? And how are these solutions also helping to transform the water treatment industry? Because again, it's the world of water treatment and technology we don't very often hear about. So I'd love to hear more on that.
Well, our next hat trick is to tokenize water.
Yeah.
So we have water on demand, which over time grows into a number of clients. Now we have a critical mass of business users of the water treatment system with investors and so forth, a nice circular thing. And then we move to delivering the dividends through the blockchain, which is already a good example is JP Morgan's Cash. That's a blockchain network for transferring money. It's very reliable. So what we're talking about here is, Mr. Hughes, you're accustomed to getting your profit share via automated clearinghouse, ACH. Well, you're now going to get it digitally. Mm. What's good about that for you is, first of all, we don't have to worry about whether you change banks and so forth and the ACH breaks and we got all these customer service people. It's a nice long hash and it's permanent. But what's even better is you can take your entire, you have a contract, 30-year contract that you can take all the future earnings of that and sell them on an open market. And for the first time, we end up with a water market. And once we get all those financial partners up and running, then we have the ability to go, I've got a water problem in Birmingham, but I can offset the problem with buying some water rights in Singapore, for example. And now it becomes a commodity. So that is actually a token we've named $H2O. And we did not include it in the water on demand for now because number one, it didn't exist. But number two, we did not have a very friendly SEC as regards tokens. That's changing, obviously. It's going to be very token friendly, and tokenization makes sense. We're not talking about doing some wild to the moon, Lambo to the moon idea. We're talking about tokenizing money flows that also represent water flows, and that's very exciting.
And I think the concept of a modular prefabricated water system is intriguing, especially given their durability and longevity. So for anybody listening, just help them understand the difference between the new world and the old world and what we're talking about here. Can you tell me a little bit more about the tech behind the systems and how that technology differs from, let's say, the traditional water treatment infrastructure, just to help people compare and contrast?
Well, Neil, we are accustomed, in the water industry, is accustomed to, kind of like building a water system as if they're building a house. And everybody comes to the house and frames it in. It's in the basement and and it goes on and on and on. And all this work happens on site, and it requires a lot of expert support to keep it going. Our model is different completely. We build the entire system at a factory. And just like Tesla's unboxed assembly, where everything streams parallel to end up, the controls, the pumps, this, the that, all ends up at the one assembly point, which is Tesla's brilliant. I mean, who knew that what kept assembly lines slow in the auto industry was the fact you can only fit so many people into a car at once. And so then they just made parallel assembly lines. How smart. this stuff's so obvious. But anyway, we have a very similar idea. And so once that unit is complete, it's containerized and it's fully self-contained. It's taken by semi-truck, lorry, over to the site, dropped onto a concrete pad. The water is connected, electricity is connected, the flip is switched, switch is flipped, and we end up with a working water system same day. That is a revolution. Yeah. And what's great about it is it enables this. Remember this financing with water on demand? Yeah. What if they stop paying? Well, that lorry comes right back, picks up the system, takes it away. Goodbye. We can repossess because we didn't build a house. That's the difference. So all of a sudden it's standardized. Now that, water on demand is currently on its way to the NASDAQ, we have a whole big merger happening with a blank check company, and that's way too exciting. I recommend no one ever do it. It's too exciting. But we're getting it done. And what that means is that we will have this ability to finance, to have inventory of these modules. The state of Texas has pre-approved these modules, so we don't have to go get permitting. We just send them in. And we can have them, stacked up in 5,000 gallon per day increments all the way on up. And, you want one of these? Sure. Here's the contract.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but when I was doing a little research on you guys, one of the things that also stood out is this a strong social justice angle to your mission too, particularly in reducing the industrial burden on cities and enhancing water access, to name but a few. So how do you at Water on Demand contribute to things like social equity, and what impact do you see in local communities that adopt this approach? Because whenever we're talking about investing and water and all those kind of things, people get a little bit nervy, a little bit jumpy, but that's quite the opposite of what you're doing here, right?
Well, the first thing to remember is that 90% thing. So the population is only 10%. If business comes off the grid, then cities are better able to serve the remaining 10%, number one. I like to say, water's free in Ireland. Why shouldn't it be free here? So why is it free? Well, it's because it's not as overburdened. The industry and agriculture have really taken advantage of the system here. So we're basically, by doing what we do, we're automatically helping the users get lower water rates. Look, high water rates impact who? Impact the poor.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure I can pay my water bill even if it goes up to $300. But that $300 is a lot of money. If you look down in local neighborhoods or whatever, right? So with that, all I can tell you is more efficient, less overburdening, and letting municipalities do their core mission, which is serving the population, is our mission. And also, we've calculated that if you increase water recycling by business by 15% to 15%, because now it's less than 1%, freshwater supplies will double. Freshwater supplies will double. So just get water being recycled by industry. The math, because they're such a large part of the picture, it'll do wonders for general water availability.
And you did mention a few moments ago about preparing to go on the NASDAQ and so many exciting things there. That probably limits what you can share with me, what you can talk about. But if I did ask you to look ahead and into your virtual crystal ball, what are your goals for Water on Demand over the next few years? How do you plan to scale this business? And are there any other emerging trends or technologies that excite you, or you just think will help shape the future of decentralized water treatment?
Well, yeah, I was telling you about power purchase agreements in the solar industry, and they are readily financed on Wall Street. You show a 20 or 30-year contract with a reputable, creditworthy customer, you can then borrow against it for your equipment. And so it's a great way to leverage, and people do hundreds of these, but it helps to be on the NASDAQ to do that. So it's a better exchange. So, we are in the middle of if you go to our news, it's all on our news page under Origin Clear. We agreed to merge with, or to be acquired by, a blank check company, which basically is a pathway to the NASDAQ. There's very few these days. In fact, it's almost impossible on NASDAQ. So this is as hard as it is, it's a viable way. And we are going through the process of getting approved by the SEC, and eventually we plan to be a NASDAQ company. And at that point, what's going to be good about that will be the ability to have dramatically better access to institutional level financing. Because, yes, people should be able to invest in these waters and oil well type structures. But when you're talking about really big money, you do have to bring in institutions. And that's where we bring in these power purchase agreement type structures, and that makes it very interesting.
Exciting times ahead. And listening to your story today and the journey that you've been on, one of the things that also stands out is in your work, you're focused on making a difference, making huge transformative changes to the world and how things have been traditionally done, and even promoting social justice, social equity in your work. And the reason that stands out to me is I think none of us are able to achieve any degree of success or anything really without a little help along the way. And I'm curious, listening to your story, was there a particular person that you're grateful towards, maybe helped you with your vision, saw something in you, invested a little time in you, anything like that helped you get you where you are today? And I'd love to hear that story, and also give that person a shout out, because I think it's so important, because I think ultimately we're all standing on the shoulders of giants in some way.
Well, he would not think of himself as a giant, but I was given my chance to become a CEO. Back in 2007 by a fund. And the patriarch of that fund is a wonderful man named Jim Bartlett, who deserves all the credit in the world. And he specializes in taking great ideas and getting them onto public markets and going. And he's been amazing. And I have to say that one of the cool guys, very, very unpretentious. You'd probably be amazed that I'm even mentioning him, but he has been a real mentor to me.
Wow, well, I love that. And as you said there, Jim Bartlett, if you are listening, a big hello to you, because from what you've just been telling me, incredibly cool guy, a humble guy, someone that doesn't see himself as a giant, and yet here you are, and it's a big part of your journey. So, Jim, a big shout out to you. I think it's so important that we recognize the people that help us achieve everything that we want to and make those big changes in the world. But big shout out to you, Jim. And for everybody listening, where is the best place you'd like to point everybody listening and find out more about anything we talked about today? Maybe they want to get involved, learn more, or connect with you or your team. Where would you like to point them?
Well, we are, of course, Origin Clear on LinkedIn, Origin Clear on X. I love it when people join me personally on my X feed, which is Riggs Eck, RIGGSECK. But also go to originclear.com, take a look at what we've got, take a look at the news, and check out the green Invest Now button to find out what we're up to and how it might be interesting. You do not have to be an accredited investor to invest. We have got the 2 tiers where you can just invest a small amount or a large amount. They're different deals. It's not the same, but everyone can invest. And we believe have a fun ride and benefit from this, emerging asset class.
Well, I always say at the end of every episode that technology works best when it brings people together. And one of the reasons I invited you on here today was to hear more about your story and how using technology, you're bringing together local industries and communities, and how they're now, as a result, treating and recycling their own water, helping to reduce the burden on municipal systems, and also saving fast rising water rates and responding to the challenges of climate change. Something quite beautiful in that. And I love how you're using technology to do all those things. But thank you for sharing that story with me today, Riggs.
Neil, I love tech. I grew up, in the .com and so forth. And if we can bring tech to every corner of society, it'll be a better society.
So a big thank you to Riggs for diving into the intricate world of water treatment and sharing how Origin Clear is pioneering change with water on demand. And I think it's fascinating to see how this company is not only addressing the environmental challenges, but also reshaping the landscape around it, as, let's be honest, water is the most valuable asset that we have. And for anybody listening intrigued by the idea of investing in water, or those just looking to understand the impacts of decentralized water treatment systems, remember to check them out. And if you've got any questions, any insights you'd like to share with me, let me know. Please email me, techblogwriter@outlook.com. LinkedIn, X, Instagram @NeilCQs, and you'll be able to send me a message. But that is it for today. I'm about out of time. All this talk of water is making me thirsty, so I'm going to go grab a drink and prepare for tomorrow's guest. But thank you for listening as always, and I will speak with you all tomorrow morning. Bye for now.